Woo! Get some! Drop it. Power panel. Cenk, Uygur, John, Iadarola, Adrienne Loris, everybody. Adrienne, of course, on Rebel Headquarters. John's, of course, on Damage Report. Also on the May Show. Both of them. Hey, there they are.
Hello.
Okay.
How's it going?
Hello.
Good, all the way over there. All right, we've got a ton of amazing, fascinating stories for you guys, including Elon Musk beginning to ban left-wingers on Twitter. Cancel culture, freedom of speech, hilarious. We were right all along, we're always right. They never meant any of it. The only thing they care about is power. If a right-winger is talking, a right-winger is lying. Okay, so we got that coming up a little bit later, but we got tons of news for you guys. John Iadarola is going to start it off for you.
I will do something like that. Although within about a month, the Republicans are going to take over the House, there are a few pieces of legislation that need to be passed, or at least likely to be passed during that period. And one is the reauthorization of the National Defense Authorization Act. And actors on both sides are trying to get into it what they want. That isn't necessarily explicitly about defense, but is still potentially very important. Let's start with the good. So you have Representative Ro Khanna, who told the Young Turks that he wants to push a $15 federal minimum wage into the NDAA reauthorization. He says, I'm pushing for requiring it as part of the NDAA. If the big oil industry wants to hold the NDAA hostage to weakening environmental protections, then progressives should demand a $15 wage as part of securing our votes. We can call the progressive deal the deal for the American people to finally get a raise. He says that this is currently being discussed internally inside of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And what I love about this isn't just that he wants to raise the federal minimum wage, which would be great, obviously, but that he's doing this in direct response to Senator Joe Manchin attempting to use the same tactic to push what his plan that we've previously talked about many times on the show to fast track permitting for some energy projects also into the NDAA. So I guess he's saying what's good for the fossil fuel industry is good for the gander. If you want your pipelines, which by the way, it isn't looking like is super likely to actually get into it, then maybe we can push for something positive that would actually benefit the American people, like a higher minimum wage. Just to remind you really fast, in case you're forgetting the Manchin pipeline deal that we're talking about, it was a big deal in the run up to the climate bill being passed earlier this year. And if his permitting bill becomes law, it will require the president to keep a rolling list of at least 25 high priority fossil fuel and renewable energy projects that would have their permitting processes fast-tracked. The bill would severely limit input from Black, Brown, Indigenous, and low-income communities, which have, of course, historically and disproportionately been impacted by harmful energy projects. And so he's going to try to do that. Ro Khanna and others are going to try to get the minimum wage increase in there. It's not going to be good.
All right, I love it. Let me explain all the reasons why I love it. First of all, if just pure logic, if Manchin gets a side deal, and it's called the Manchin side deal, why shouldn't progressives get a side deal? So now we've got the Khanna side deal. Yeah, like because Washington is used to, well, obviously we're going to give conservatives everything they want, and they don't even consider progressives. So there has to be a progressive leader that goes, no, you don't get our votes unless you put our side deal in too. Like the thing is, everyone watching this is going, of course, why is this even a story? Why is it controversial? Why is it? But in Washington, everyone thinks it's outrageous. How could progressives demand something? How dare you? You better get back in line, right? So now look, they keep saying, don't worry, the Manchin side deal is not very likely. That's what everybody says. So that's why reporters are accurate, including our own reporter Candace Cole, who covered this story, who broke this story, saying that all the politicians are saying on the Democratic side, it's not likely that they'll put the Manchin side deal in. I've seen them say that 1,000 times, and then sneak it in the last second and go, oh, well, what can we do, right? So the win-win in this proposal is, well, either you're going to say no to both, right? And say, oh, all right, no, well, obviously we can't do a $15 minimum wage. Our corporate bosses would be furious with us, right? So there's, like, that's an impossible ask. By the way, remember when Biden and all the other Democratic leaders lied and said that it was easy? They were definitely going to do that. It was among the bare minimum, if you will. Now they say, oh, impossible, impossible, right? Okay, good, then the Manchin side deal is impossible. We have a deal. At least then progressives help to kill the fossil fuel provision that he was trying to put in there. That's awesome. And look at that initiative from Ro Khanna. And all of a sudden, by the way, we got more progressives that are joining. We'll tell you about that in a second. And so that would be a great win if progressives got to kill the Manchin side deal. Put that up on our wall, right? And then the other one is in the impossible situation where they're like, well, we got to do the Manchin side deal. All right, I guess we'll do a $15 minimum wage. I'm like, oh my God, we got $15 minimum wage. Holy cow, how did that happen? So it's great from Ro Khanna to fight back like this. I love it. Adrienne, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. This very much seems like it's a win-win situation in terms of pushing back, locking in possibly that $15 minimum wage and tethering it in the same kind of way in which Manchin did it. It really does put them in a position where hopefully the people will win ultimately. And the thing is that as you've noted, Manchin and individuals like him have been taking advantage of these little side deals for some time now. So why don't we take advantage of one for we the people? And so I really appreciate that this is done.
Yeah, we should of course consider the possibility, only because the worst thing happens a not insignificant percentage of the time that they do the pipeline and kill this. It's possible. I mean, I don't know why would they even have to consider them as linked? And by the way, just because this is a progressive thing being added in doesn't mean it has to be the only progressive thing that is added in. I would love to see many more amendments added.
Yeah, but John, there's a real problem in what you're saying. So
generally,
yeah. Look, is it true? Is it true that generally speaking in DC they'll put in the conservative provision and leave out the progressive provision? Yeah, happens nearly 100% of the time, right? But that's what Khanna's trying to prevent here. He's saying, well, then you're not going to get our votes. There is an actual vote here, right? And you need a block of votes. Now, the Democrats can easily, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi are very conservative economically. They love serving their donors. They would hate to do a $15 minimum wage. So if they had to, it might force them to go get Republican votes to replace the progressives.
Yeah.
But then look, I know there's no real reporters in the country, okay, other than Candace covering this story accurately. But in mainstream media, that would give away the game. That would tell you Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Biden, etc., are right-wingers on economic issues. But as I tell you that, there's not a single reporter that would believe that, despite overwhelming evidence.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a trick. That's not a new trick. That's a trick the Democratic leadership has done 1,000 times, where they go, oh, we need more votes, but progressives are protesting. Which, by the way, I should be fair, not 1,000 times, 7, like 2 times at most, okay? Because progressives almost never raise a ruckus. So that's another reason why I love that Khanna is doing this, right? But a couple of times the progressives have said, no, you're not getting our vote. They immediately go get Republican votes because it's actually a right-wing proposal, right? And so, but then that tells you, oh, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, etc., are right-wingers. But the press would never write that, not in a million years. Instead, what they would write is totally counterfactual. They would say, although Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, and I keep mentioning Hakeem Jeffries because he's the new leader of the Democrats in the House, at least in the next session. Although Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer would love to do the $15 minimum wage, they have voluntarily decided not to do it and instead to do the Republican position.
Yeah, I have a question actually about that because there's one other possibility that's percolating in my mind. But really fast, you mentioned that there were other progressives who were signing on to this concept or at least seemed supportive of it. So we want to give them credit. When asked if he was on board with Khanna's push to attach a $15 hourly wage to the NDAA, Representative Jamal Bowman told the Young Turks, hell yeah. We need a $15 federal minimum wage, period. We should have done this a year and a half ago, but hell yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we can make that happen. Jamie Raskin, who serves as a vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, said that he hadn't been briefed yet on what Khanna had dubbed the deal for the American people to finally get a raise, but didn't shut it down, telling TYT that he'd be very curious to read Khanna's legislation. That is something, I guess, that could be significantly stronger. And also looking forward, Bernie Sanders is saying that he will work to defeat Manchin's bill in the Senate. So you have a dual track effort to try to stop that from being made law. My concern though is, so you talked about the possibility that they could tell the progressives to go kick rocks and instead they're just gonna get some Republicans to sign on, which could potentially work. Or alternatively, since there's only a month until the Republicans take over, couldn't the Republicans just refuse to play ball and gain far more control over what ends up getting put into the NDAA?
No, because they couldn't get the Senate to agree because the Democrats still hold the Senate. Whereas here, no, because
would they consider that a massive problem if it causes chaos?
The reason is Schumer doesn't want to be perceived as helping the Republicans pass something when the Republicans have the House. But right now, when the Democrats still in lame duck session have the House and the Senate, they could pass a Republican bill while pretending it's a Democratic bill, okay? And so that's like Democratic leadership 101. So that way, the fact that it's actually a right-wing proposal gets buried, and the mainstream media says Democrats do historic legislation, Manchin side deal. Guys, whatever you do not sleep on the Manchin side deal. Anytime that people in Washington tell you that a right-wing proposal is not likely to happen, it's likely to happen, okay? So they always give the donors what they want, and Manchin's is gift wrapped for the donors, for the fossil fuel donors, and not just Republicans, but as you'll see later in the show, Democrats are swimming in oil money. And so that's why I love that Khanna's fighting back. I love that Bowman gave that enthusiastic yes answer. By the way, we should, if you guys can get involved in this too. Candace is going and asking as a reporter, hey, what is your position to these different progressive legislators? But you should ask them on Twitter too. Do you support this? There's no reason in the world why every progressive in Congress shouldn't support this. And they say killing the Manchin side deal is likely, and so great. Then it should be a no-brainer. In fact, we say progressives, but remember, almost every Democrat is pretending to be in favor of $15 minimum wage. So the entire Democratic Party should say that this should go in the NDAA if the Manchin side deal goes in the NDAA. But if you ask,
or anyway,
yeah, but if you ask 90% of Democrats, they'll never agree because they're lying. They hate the idea of $15 minimum wage.
Yeah.
So that's how this game is played. And finally, there's a progressive who knows how to play it. So it puts them on a spot. I love it, and hopefully it kills the Manchin side deal.
Yeah.
All right. You going to go
really fast before we go? I just want to mention a couple of other things that are important as we go into these negotiations. Really fast, you should know that negotiators in both the House and the Senate apparently agreed over the past couple of days to add $45 billion to the defense budget, which is, I'm going to say, a medium-sized country's defense budget. They're just going to add it. We must, I guess, last year have had effectively no defense. We were so lacking in defense that we need to add $45 billion. It's a good thing nobody attacked us last year because apparently we had a terrible military or something. Also, nearly half of the Senate Republican caucus is threatening to block the NDAA reauthorization unless the coronavirus vaccine mandate is taken out. And all of those who were taken out of the military because they wouldn't comply with this common sense, easy to accomplish mandate were knocked out. They have to be reinstated as well.
So my view on defund the police versus the military is completely different. So I think defund the police is not a great slogan, and I think that the money in reality should be reallocated to police and mental health, which is what defund the police kind of actually wants to do. But taking away actual cops off the streets, I don't think is necessarily a good idea. Reforming the cops is absolutely essential. The fact that they can't achieve that balance drives me crazy. Okay, but when you come to defense, Do we really need an $800 billion defense bill? If we had a $100 billion defense bill and saved $700 billion, would our chances of being attacked and losing a single American be any higher? I got news for you, it wouldn't. No. This is not like crime where, hey, there's no cops and then all of a sudden there's more crime because it's right there, it's on the street. No, someone actually has to attack us. The chance of that is near zero, okay? This is all pork. It's all, the defense bill is like 80% corruption. So if the Republican threat is, oh yeah, we won't pass the defense bill unless you take the vaccine thing out. I'd be like, oh, okay, make my day. And then I would say, oh, look, the Republicans apparently don't like defense. They just voted against the defense bill. Okay, what are you gonna do now, Ted Cruz? Go for it. Have at it, Hoss. Right, but Democrats are liars, the Democratic leadership. As we're telling you, I'm giving credit to Kana, Bowman, wonderful progressives who are Democrats, but Democratic leadership, remember the 45 billion extra for no reason at all. Republicans don't control any of the houses right now. We're still in the lame duck session. Democrats have the House and the Senate and the presidency. They're the ones adding extra pork because they're also corrupt, right? So if the Democrats ever actually meant a single thing they'd said, they'd be like, oh great, go ahead, Cruz, McConnell, block the defense bill. I'd love to see it. But there's no way Schumer would do that because he agrees with McConnell. There's no way Jeffries would do that, but because he agrees with Kevin McCarthy. They can't wait to shove all that money to their defense contractor donors.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. It definitely seems that, of course, the objective is to maintain the status quo as opposed to actually make meaningful change for we the people. And while I definitely have different views about police and defunding the police, given that we pour too many resources and it's a militarized state and having more of them is not helping, and we should pour into other services, but also this whole defense and pouring money into the Department of Defense and giving more money toward that budget. As you've noted, who are we defending ourselves against? If anything, my God, you could probably just grab a militia from one of these states that would be perfectly adequate in fending off any defense, given how many weapons are just accessible so much in our country. It's incredibly disheartening seeing how funds are being spent when so many people are suffering, particularly right now.
Yep.
Want to take our first break?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's take a quick break. By the way, guys, in that story where the right wingers put together the blacklist of left wingers to be banned, some of us are on it, and some of us are not. Drums, okay? We're gonna show you parts of the list later in the show. So a fun reveal. Everybody stay right here, we'll be back.
Jack.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, Adrienne with you guys. Also, Louis Eulander just joined, and so did Kurt Million. And Kurt wrote in, I figured I'd join in lieu of sending $10 every time I watch. Kurt, there's no reason why you couldn't do both.
Yeah, why not?
But anyway, seriously, we love having you. Thanks for being with us. All of our members make this show possible. Without the members, we have nothing. We are of the people, by the people, for the people. John.
Okay, let's jump into it. This is a fun one. Elon Musk would have you believe that he's all about free speech and letting as many people onto Twitter as possible. And there are even some people in America, some in media, dumb enough to believe him for some reason I'll never understand. He has allowed a lot of horrible people back onto Twitter, and in some cases, like with Kanye, he's already regretting it. But at the same time, right-wingers know what's really up, what the plan really is, and they're already putting it into motion. A group of right-wingers have put together a list of about 5,000 Twitter accounts. This is journalists, Democratic politicians, celebrities, researchers, and even some people here at TYT. They've been filing mass fake issues with these accounts and then appealing directly to Elon Musk to begin getting them banned. That would be bad enough. What's worse is they're already succeeding in getting some of the people from their list to be banned. Now, an early hint about this organized effort was revealed last month in right side news posts on Telegram. Organizers have falsely claimed that the targeted Twitter profiles are Antifa or followers of Antifa, which I will remind you, in case you're new to American politics, isn't a group, you can't join it. It's a loose philosophy. It isn't one thing with a website and a mailing list. That's not actually how it works. And when right-wingers use the term Antifa, it has as much actual meaning as when they use the word woke. It just means they don't like something and then that's it. But anyway, you can see here a post of the actual text file where you can find those accounts. This is all open now. There are reports spamming against the accounts on that list. And here is the issue. So among those that have already been taken off of Twitter is Chad Loder, an anti-fascist researcher who identified a Proud Boy member who was involved in the insurrection, and journalist Vishal Pratap Singh, who was reported on far-right protests in Southern California. They obviously had to go for some reason. Loder attributed his Twitter exile to an organized mass reporting campaign against left-wing Twitter users. The group has published detailed instructions on Substack on how to falsely report people. It includes a long list of accounts with Loder's Twitter profile address at the top. Now, specifically when it comes to Loder, senior members of Twitter's trust and safety team before Musk bought Twitter and got rid of people like them were aware of this campaign specifically against Loder. It's a violation of Twitter's policies and they were planning to address it, but many of them have now either been fired, either intentionally or accidentally, or they've quit. So the team that's there to stop these campaigns from working no longer exists. Now, there's a lot of other people on this list, and we can get into some of the tactics, but I know that you're gonna want to talk about the TYT people, right, Cenk?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, wait until you get a load of this.
Okay. All right. So first of all, though, let's just acknowledge the obvious stuff. If a right winger is talking, a right winger is lying. So all that talk about freedom of speech. Elon Musk said that he took over Twitter not for the money. No, he would never care about money. No, he did it not to manipulate crypto markets. No, not at all, okay? No, he did it because he's a free speech absolutist. He's already banned a couple of these left-wingers. Why? Because they're left-wingers. He's like, and what did I tell you guys? I've told you this 100 times. The right wing doesn't care about any principles of America. They don't believe in freedom, equality, justice, none of it. The only thing they care about is power. Everything else is a gimmick. Like, so if in a democracy they're winning, they're like, oh, we love democracy. The minute they start losing in a democracy, they're like, goddamn democracy. This is a republic, not a democracy. And you know what? The votes don't count anyway. The state legislatures should pick it. The gerrymandered districts where we have minorities but wound up having the legislatures anyway. But democracy sucks, right? So, that's funny, right? And then they're like, oh, freedom of speech, cancel culture so bad. They take over Twitter. They're like, this cancel all the left wingers. Instantly. And look at these tricks that they're doing to do it. I mean, and Musk, look, there's two things. One, he's not anywhere near as smart as people thought he was. And he looks like he's being led around. I mean, he's gonna come out in a black mask like Kanye soon. And I don't mean on the anti-Semitism stuff. I mean like being the right wing's gimp. That's who he is. They're leading him around so easily by the nose. I mean, I get it. He's a right winger himself, and he's a billionaire, so he wants his beloved money. Oh, precious, must protect against democratic tax increases. And precious, and that's part of why he bought Twitter too. So he's a full-blown right winger. But the minute a right winger goes, "Hey, remember that free speech absolutist crap? You were just joking. Start banning these people." You know, I was like, "Yes, sir, right away, sir." And he puts on his gimp mask, and then he's like, "You're banned, right?" And by the way, it could be or he fired 95% of the safety and trust group. So when left wingers never do any tricks. The left wingers never even have a plan, let alone a trick, right? The right wingers instantly, they have 1,000 tricks. They're like, oh, if we just report this and the flag that and this, that, the next thing you know, we can ban all the left wingers. Yes, cancel culture, the right wing loves it. And don't pretend you don't love it, right wingers. Because I guarantee you right now, people have already written comments in this video, YouTube, Facebook, wherever they're watching it, saying, oh, well, you guys started it, so that's why we had to ban all of you guys. Oh, yeah, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. That's their excuse every time. But we didn't do it. You made up that we did it. And then you went and actually did it. So let's look at the Young Turks list. First, let's look at the people who were banned, okay?
Or on the list to be banned.
On the list to be banned, they haven't been banned yet, okay? So these are the badasses of TYT. Anna Kasparian, the Salt Dragon, banned. And then Jordan Ewell, He's all over our programming, all over the network. He's banned. He's one of the cool kids of Twitter. I love calling him that, even though he's not anywhere near a kid. Former TYT host, current Majority Report host Emma Vigeland, the Vig, banned. Too tough, too strong. They can't take these folks. Former TYT contributor, current Intercept reporter Kenny Clips, one of the cool kids of Twitter, banned. I checked Hassan the Hun, banned. Okay, so former TYT host Sampai. Funny enough, former TYT host Dave Rubin and Jimmy Dore not banned. Interesting. Anyways, now let's look at the soft people of TYT. Not banned. Okay, leading the list, of course, is me. Okay, too soft, too soft. They're like, oh, this guy's no problem.
Well, you don't really.
We don't have to bother banning him.
Cenk, you don't pick fights on Twitter.
No, me never.
And frequently, you'll trend, and I'm not immediately disturbed and worried about what it portends. Every time you trend, it's like, oh, it's just a normal good news day.
Okay, so John not banned, Adrienne not banned, Brad Ehrlich, J.R. Jackson not banned. So apparently, Adrienne, we got to try harder.
Apparently, yeah, I agree. We're not doing a disservice to the right that we should be doing. It was so upsetting to see that list, in part because it did scare a number of people. And by scare, I mean generally people who are marginalized to begin with, and they know what harassment is like, and they often experience it. And they went ahead and locked their accounts, which sucks because it is a win for these right-wing hacks who are trying to silence and to scare people from being who they are and speaking out and uplifting issues that are important. And so it's really incredibly sad as well that Twitter is enabling this behavior, but it's not so much a shocker given how much we've seen the rise in hate speech, and it just really seems that Twitter is going to be wet of 4chan very soon.
Yeah, and let me just jump on that for one real quick point. Adrienne's making a great point there. Remember, Elon Musk brought back a lot of the worst, most hateful people onto Twitter. The people that had done actual violations, putting out, like in the case of Kanye, like over the top anti-Semitic speech. Remember, he got banned from Twitter originally for saying that he was going to start DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, right? Jeez. And Elon Musk is like, oh, come on back. A left-wing reporter, cancel that guy, okay? So that's literally what he's been doing since he took over Twitter. Now, again, I don't know that he's doing it actively or if he's just an idiot and fired too many people and his schmuck falls into every right-wing trap. Both are incredibly possible, but the actions are clear. Now, Kanye got rebanned for putting a swastika just today, right? But before he put the swastika up, he had already said that he loves Nazis and likes Hitler, and that hadn't done the job.
Yeah.
But being a left-wing reporter, that gets you banned.
Yeah. Since I saw this list that I wasn't on there, I've been thinking about why I wasn't on the list, and I have come up with a couple of, I think, intriguing explanations. One is that I am strong, not soft, strong, but I'm a delight. I mean, honestly, even if you disagree with me, come on, are you really gonna get me banned? I think even right-wingers want me around. Or alternatively, and I'm willing to accept both of these simultaneously, those other people, they're like, sure, we can try to slap them around or whatever, but nobody wants to mess with me. That's what I'm telling myself. They're scared, too scared to try to ban me online. Or both, or neither.
As I tweeted ironically here, just before we got on air, how much right-wing ass does a brother have to kick before he gets banned off of Twitter, right? Jesus, I mean, as John pointed out, I trend every other day because of how hard I'm kicking their ass, of course, rhetorically and politically, right? But still, I didn't make it. I wanted to be on a blacklist. I'm kind of hurt by it.
Yeah.
But guys, we're both kidding around, but it's super serious at the same time. So let's talk about the people who are already kicked off. So Anna, Emma, et cetera, are on a list to get kicked off by the right-wing group. Again, they're trying to influence Elon Musk. It's not Elon Musk's list, it's their list, right? But some have already been thrown off. So John, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so I mentioned an academic and a reporter. We had the Elm Fork John Brown Gun Club as an anti-fascist group that provides armed security for LGBTQ+ events. They were temporarily suspended. Crime the Inc., an anarchist collective founded in the mid-1990s, had been temporarily suspended. A leftist journalist in a private DM group that I'm with was also temporarily suspended. People kicked up a big fuss and the account was put back. That sort of implies perhaps that the system is just grinding to a halt, that they don't have the employees necessary. But when the fascist groups are getting banned. I mean, look, we know who Elon Musk is chatting with. There's a chance he's doing it literally right now as we record this. He talks to people like Andy Ngo. He only speaks to the craziest right wing, like deranged right wing grifters. That's who he is regularly talking with, and then telling them to DM him people that need to be banned. Why are we surprised when those sorts of people are going to begin to get banned? When the personal journalist for fascist militias is DMing with the guy who owns the platform, that is cause for alarm, and we know that that's actually happening. Yeah. But I will also throw out, and maybe this is me being contrarian or whatever. And we'll see if you agree. I'm talking about how this is, a ridiculous, like it's complete transparent, case that their arguments about free speech are BS. They never really meant it, all of that. But that said, I don't think that being banned is a violation of free speech rights. If he wants to ban literally all these people, I think that he's free to do that. He's not the government, it's a private company. He will, in doing that, make this a place that other people won't want to go to and a place that people won't want to advertise for. There are reasons that there are sensible, common sense regulations on what you can and cannot post. But if he wants to turn this into his own private theme park, if he wants to be, as Edwin pointed out on Wednesday, Eric Cartman, who just bought the theme park and only allow the right-wing grifters he wants, he can do that, and that's not a violation of your First Amendment rights. It is just a violation of the principles he purports to live by.
100% right. And so that goes to something that one of our members said. Before I get to that, I'm gonna go to a different member. Mike Boy for mayor, Queen Mother Dragon asked on Twitch, is Doc Ritchie not banned, right? So that's Rashad Ritchie, does Indisputable on our network. I checked, he's not banned either. So, and then as I was looking around the list, there's 5,000 people on the list. So I was just doing a quick skim of it. I stumbled across some politicians and I'm like corporate Democrats are banned? Like, okay, this is a weird soft list then. And then I saw Christy Smith is banned. She's like a failed corporate Democrat who ran for Congress like 18 times, the softest Democrat in the history of America. These are, whoever's made the list, let's be honest, rank amateurs, okay? If they think Uygur's safe, he won't hit the right wing, but Christy, we gotta get rid of her. They don't know anything at all.
That said, while they've left a lot of good people off the list, the 4 from TYT that they listed, if I was a right winger, I'd want to get them off. They are all very strong and very aggressive.
No question. The ones that are on the list from TYT are wonderful, so they were right there. But you're not gonna ban Rashad. Oh, Nina Turner, not banned. They don't know what they're doing, okay? It's just like shooting in the dark here. All right, but I wanted to get to, and I love our members make this show possible. Next Polarity said, so just turn Twitter into another worthless right-wing platform, big deal. That goes to John's point, okay? And it's a point I meant to make earlier and didn't. So I love when members finish the thought. $100 gift card from Blue Apron. If rewards at tyt.com. If they'll verify that you're a member. I love this great points you're making. Because think about the point that person just made. If Elon Musk actually gets rid of 5,000 left-wingers on Twitter, or even 500, or even really 50 in a prominent way, then it just becomes a dumb right-wing platform. It becomes Getter. And who the hell wants to stay on Getter, right? He will have trashed the site, the platform, 10,000 times more than any left-winger could have. Because, like, seriously, the minute it turns into a right-wing platform where all the left wing is banned, it becomes the dullest, least interesting site in the world.
Yeah. Want to move on to other news?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Unfortunately, it's not the best news, but we do have to address it. An 82-year-old woman in Alabama was actually arrested this week for the crime of having not paid for her trash to be picked up. It was delinquent, and so this 82-year-old woman needed to be hauled away from her home. So here's what actually happened. The woman is Martha Menafield, and when 2 officers pulled up outside of her house in Valley, Alabama, she had no idea why they were there. She believed that the bill had actually been paid. She thought that the officer was playing some sort of prank, as I think any reasonable person would. Though she says he didn't budge. "You're not kidding," she asked him, and he wasn't. He was there to arrest her. The bill, by the way, was $77.80, basically nothing. She was hauled away, arrested on Sunday, released on bond. She was issued a citation in August by city code enforcement officers in Valley, about 80 miles northeast of Montgomery, for the failure to pay for trash services in the months of June, July, and August. And every one of the details that comes after this is sadder than the one before. She said that she thought the bill had already been paid, but they said it hadn't. She said, and the cuffs, her eyes swelling with tears, they're so heavy. She's 82 years old. When the officer told her not to cry, she asked him, "How would you feel if they came and arrested your grandmama?" She said she thought the bill was paid and was confused, I guess, about her utilities because her water kept getting turned on and off. She said, "I like to cook, I like to clean," but she had to borrow water from her neighbors to do those things. So understandably confused about whether services were even being given to her location. And finally, she says, "I've been questioning God a little bit afterward. I guess because I've been so upset. I had a daycare here for 8 years and I've been asking the Lord, I say, why did this happen to me as much as I've done for people, Lord? I've paid my tithes every Sunday. I ushered at church. I was just questioning, something's just not right." I agree with that last point.
Yeah, so let's note how justice works in America, okay? So sometimes it's on issues of race, and could that be a factor here? Sure, in our production meeting, I like to play this inappropriate game called Guess the Race. If the person's been arrested, 90% of the time, it'll be black. It doesn't matter what the topic is. It doesn't matter what the theoretical crime is. There's a story we didn't get to in the rundown today. 10-year-old boy is arrested, charged as an adult. Guess the race, black, of course, right? I'm gonna explain why in a second, okay? But it's not just about race. And you could argue which one is more important, but another massive issue is wealth, okay? So great juxtaposition here is, can we show this jackass that's been making news recently? I've been calling him the black condom or the gimp. And so this jackass owes the United States government $50 million, but he doesn't get handcuffs. He's going around saying how much he loves Nazis and Hitler and etc. Owes $50 million, according to him. He said it, right? And he's like, "Oh, the Jews are the ones that are persecuting me." No, you just didn't pay your taxes, right? But in his infinite entitlement, because he's already rich, he feels like, I don't have to pay you $50 million. That little old lady, 82-year-old black grandmother, led away in handcuffs over, what was it, John, $70 or $77?
77 to be fair.
$77
and 80
trash.
cents.
Yeah, $77 trash and water bill. Okay, and for everyone watching this, you're all saying, screaming into your screens, of course, this is the America we all know. Crush the poor and the middle class maybe even the most, and let the rich slide on everything, If you say that in DC, they're like, "Oh, sounds like a conspiracy theory." Okay, whatever. I mean, tell her that. All right, Adrienne.
So I remember seeing this story come through my feed on Twitter, and it was kind of the same game that you play. It's guess the race. We figured it would be a black person, knowing that this was this vulnerable older woman who cannot pay for her trash bill. If anything, that's a failing of the system, not of this woman in particular. And especially when you look at the community in which she lives in, Valley, Alabama, which is a pretty small place where the median home value is like $90,000. Average annual income per person, we're looking at about $25,000. It doesn't sound like this is a thriving populace. And by virtue of the fact that this woman seems to definitely be doing the best that she can to put her in handcuffs and drag her away on account of her inability to pay for her trash. Again, this is a failing of the system, but the thing is, the system is set up to fail, and it fails particular people with that mindset. And when it's black and brown people, that is exactly what is supposed to happen. And then they bring law enforcement into the equation, and it just, all it is you see this structural elements in play for exactly how the system is set up to operate against individuals who are black and brown.
Yeah, so now let me explain real quick why and how her race affects this issue. So are there some folks in Alabama who might go, oh, it's the black part of town? Yeah, let's go arrest them. Yes, definitely there are. And we saw in the Trump era, that kind of overt racism is back in overwhelming degree. Did it ever go away? No, but has it become more overt? Yes. But I don't think that's the biggest factor. I think the biggest factor is when it's a white 82-year-old grandmother, somebody in the sheriff's office goes, oh, no, that's Sally. Bobby knows her, that's Bobby's aunt's sister, right? No, don't go arrest her. Put her in handcuffs, you crazy? No, we'll find a different way. Go warn her, go talk to her, right? And if you need, Bobby will even pay it, right? It's because they know each other and they think, well, we wouldn't arrest Bobby's 82-year-old grandmother, but they don't know the people in the black part of town. And they've got the stereotypes in their heads already, so they're like, what's the first thing we do? We don't talk to her, they say, oh, we put a note on her door. That's not good enough. And your second step is to put her in handcuffs? They didn't even consider, hey, maybe the cops go down there and instead of arresting her, they say, man, I'm really sorry about this, but there's this outstanding $77 thing. We want to make sure you knew about it before we had to serve process and do all that stuff. You think they wouldn't have done that courtesy in the white part of town? And guys, it's not, like I said, it's not just that we're racism, it's because they would have known the guy or the lady in the white part of town. And so that's why structural racism, among the reasons why it exists and why minorities in this country get hit a lot harder.
Yeah. It's weird because I thought that in America recently, if you were alleged to have possibly stolen something, like sure, it seems against the law, but you're supposed to like appoint a special master. Maybe Merrick Garland would be like, what signal does it send if we were to arrest this thief? I don't know. And it's supposed to take years at the least.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just Florida, I don't know.
Yeah, so, and if you ask Republicans, by the way, they would tell you, oh, if it's a black 82-year-old grandmother, she didn't pay her trash bill, of course you put her away. Oh, it's Donald Trump, and he says he's worth billions of dollars and he stole national secrets? Of course you don't put him away, how dare you? Give him all the legal process in the world until it takes 28 years to prosecute him, right?
You know, the mistake
she genuinely believe that.
The mistake she made is she should have ran for president. Then she would have been immune from any charges.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should take our last break.
Yes, we got to come back. We have more amazing news for you guys when we come back. We'll be right back. Back on TYT, Cenk and John with you guys. Adrienne had to run real quick. And so, but she's in her place. We've got Your God Is Mean, Dorothy Curry, Janice Bloom, Alpha Dog. They all just became members, and now they're all part of the Young Turks. We love you guys. Thanks for doing that. You can hit the join button below or tyt.com/join to become a member. And let's be honest, a bit of an American hero. Okay.
At least a bit.
Yeah. Iadarola, Swordle.
Okay, let's talk about some news as I get more and more uncomfortable. Earlier this week, the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, who you're seeing there, had to explain inflation, which is still high. Not as bad as it was earlier this year, but it is still a concern. And his concern, what he thinks is causing it, is workers' wages being too high, and something needs to be done about that. The fact that corporations' profits are absolutely off the chart, that's not worthy of consideration, not a big deal, doesn't need to be restrained. But anyway, 263,000 new jobs have been added. Again, that's not the concern. The concern is the wages. And so he had this to say about the issue of out of control wage increases. In the labor market, demand for workers far exceeds the supply of available workers, and nominal wages have been growing at a pace well above what would be consistent with 2% inflation over time. Thus, another condition we are looking for is the restoration of balance between supply and demand in the labor market, which is like it's so vague that maybe that doesn't really like resonate, but that is ominous. They mean they're going to be targeting workers and doing literally anything they can to drive down wage increases, to stop this situation, this untenable situation where workers have more power to dictate the conditions of their work than they've had in recent history. Something needs to be done about that. He's being a little bit vague about what they're gonna do, but it is ominous all the same. And here's the crazy thing. wages have kind of gone up a little bit recently. I mean, we're coming out of the chaos of the pandemic. We've lost over 1 million people. Who's surprised to find out that there are less workers competing for the same wages? But honestly, when you look at a chart, let's bring up the chart now, you'll see that while hourly compensation has gone up a bit over literally the past 2 decades, it is still being dwarfed in scale by productivity. So workers are getting paid a little bit more representative a share of what they're producing, but it is still nothing compared to the value of their work. And that obviously is not something that Jerome Powell is gonna focus on, just the wages and how they need to be reined in.
So I'm going to decipher 2 quotes from Powell for you guys that's amazing and tells you all you need to know about the people in power in this country. But first, that's my favorite graph in the world.
I know.
Okay, and that's in my new book that's gonna come out very soon, September. But if you'd like to pre-order it, God bless your heart, justicescomingbook.com. The links are always in the description box. But the reason why that's such an amazing chart is that I'll give you one fact, I'll give you a spoiler from the book. That means that they took $17,000 a year from the average American worker every year. That you were that productive, but instead of giving it to you, as I show in the book, it went straight to corporate profits. That is the chart that shows the great American robbery. Can you imagine if you had $17,000 more every single year? And if your wages had kept up with productivity before the corporations took over the Supreme Court, you would have had it. And you did have it. Look at it. And the reason why that chart is so telling is because we didn't always have income inequality. We actually had a great system until 1978, and the right wing brought in their literal activist judges, and they called them activist judges, to take over the Supreme Court and allow bribery. And so that way corporations could bribe all the politicians, and that's the hole that we find ourselves in. And that's why there's no one to fight back for you guys, at least certainly among corporate politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike, when Powell says things like this. So let me decipher for you. So one of the things he said is, quote, significant and persistent labor supply shortfall opened up during the pandemic, a shortfall that appears unlikely to fully close anytime soon. So they speak in these terms partly because, hey, look, those are economic terms and that's what they're used to, and they all live in that world. But partly to confuse you guys, because if they spoke clearly, you'd be 10,000 times angrier. What does it mean to have a significant and persistent labor supply shortfall? That means there's not enough workers. There's a labor supply shortfall, like not enough workers, and there's too much demand. Well, okay, for people that need to be hired. So what does that mean? Number one, that means other than inflation, you got a kick-ass economy, okay? Because we're at basically full employment, and we're past full employment. They can't fill the jobs they need to fill, okay? And so number one, Biden's a loser. You should be taking credit for that every single day. God damn it, my economy's so hot that we've got an inflation problem because we're at full employment. But he's an idiot, he doesn't do that, et cetera. That's a small part of it, right? But the bigger part of it is they're saying, we got too many of you guys that we don't have enough of you guys. And so we wind up having to pay you more, and we don't wanna pay you more. Because anyone who's taken Econ 101 knows the prices where supply and demand meet, right? And since there's a lower supply, it's driving up your wages. And Powell is saying that is terrible. Why is that terrible? That's great for me and you, right? But for the people that are in charge of our government, the idea of you having higher wages is a problem for them. Why? Because they hate you? No, it's not like a cabal. They're not like weirdo, evil people in a pizza shop or anything like that. No, they just think, well, that'll drive up inflation. Well, but it doesn't have to. The corporations could actually shoulder some of the pain that comes with that. And that's how it worked in a normal economy in the past. Some of the costs would be passed on to you guys. Some of the costs would be eaten by the companies. Why would they eat the cost? Because there's too much competition. They'd lose too many customers if they increase prices too much. But they've set up oligopolies and monopolies because they've captured the government. So now the amount of companies in the last 30 years or so has shrunk to half the size. So there's so many less public companies now because the giant companies have set up all of these oligopolies, where that means just a couple of companies that run the whole market. Then they do price fixing, so you have no choice at all. So they're still driving up prices. That's what's causing the inflation, right? And so, but Powell never ever talks about companies and their record profits. Now, if you got a steaming hot economy that's so hot that it's causing inflation, and then at the same exact time as you're gonna see corporate profits are at an unbelievable record high, any rational government official would say, well, obviously corporations are getting a windfall here, right? And you could have different ideas of what to do with that windfall, but they would say that would be a big part of what they want to address. Instead, Powell focused on the labor supply shortfall because he wants to blame it on the workers.
Yeah.
And again, not because he's evil, but because everyone that is at that level just assumes that. That's how they think. That's their group thing. Goddamn workers getting paid too much. And by increasing interest rates, you know what he's trying to do? He's trying to drive down your wages. And then he figures, oh, that's how we're gonna get control of inflation. Unbelievable. But now, second shocking part of this, and John, you said everybody kind of knows this. I have to confess that I hadn't thought of the scale of this. So let me quote here. The second, and this is WSWS.org that I'm quoting from. The second factor was the slower growth in the working age population due to a combination of, now I'm quoting back to Powell, quote, plunge in net immigration. Wait, what? I thought we had open borders.
Yeah.
I thought everybody was coming in. Net immigration is going down under Biden.
But what about the Great Replacement?
Okay, none of that is true. None of that is true. Here's the head of the Federal Reserve saying the problem is we don't have enough immigrants. Okay, so that's point one in the second factor here. And then he says, plunge in net immigration and a surge in deaths during the pandemic, probably accounting for 1.5 million missing workers. So many people died during COVID that's part of the reason why we have a labor shortage, because they died. Meanwhile, the Republicans are like, who cares about masks and vaccines? Everybody get back in the assembly lines, and oops, you got to drove them back to the assembly lines. A lot of them caught COVID because you told them not to take precautions. They died, and now you're missing 1.5 million workers. Okay, so that's what's actually happening. And by the way, guys, the quotes that I read are direct quotes from Powell. I'm not the one saying it, he's the one saying it.
Yeah.
But they say it in gobbledygook so that, and the reporters are all part of this. Again, they're not evil, they're just used to the groupthink of, well, of course, the problem is wages. And I haven't seen anybody report about how corporate profits are at a record and it's outrageous and it's contributing to inflation. Find me an op-ed that says that. Maybe they'll let one progressive on out of like hundreds and hundreds of op-eds written saying, no, it's the goddamn workers, it's the workers' problem, it's the wages are too high. That's because it's not, mainstream media is corporate media. They're multi-billion-dollar corporations themselves, and where do they get all their money? Two sources. Other multi-billion-dollar corporations that do ads and the corruption in politics. Politicians give them $17 billion every election. They did in the last midterm, and to cover up the corruption, and that's where all of the money goes.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of like a very small scale version of the political and economic reorganization and chaos that followed like the Black Plague. Like how you had like the system of government, the organization of the economy in European countries fundamentally changed because so many people had died in such a short period of time, and the balance of power between classes changed as a result of it. Obviously, this is a much smaller percentage, but when you combine that with the immigration challenge changes and other things, we're seeing, I think, a version of it. Anyway, as you pointed out, yeah, the profits are out of control. US Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis reported non-financial sector corporate profits of $2.08 trillion during the third quarter. That's up from $1.9 trillion through the same period last year. Yeah, second quarter profits, 2.07 trillion. Now that may seem high, but it's important to note that is not high enough for them to ever lower prices, literally ever. And by the way, when it comes to price gouging, it is crazy that Biden and other politicians aren't using this, the quote I'm about to read you, as the rationale for some sort of bill to stop the corporate price gouging, some sort of windfall profits tax. This is Darren Woods, CEO of ExxonMobil, who said, I'm optimistic that with time, the market, and we've proven this, I think, over the years, that the markets will come back into balance. But it is a function of time. I think in the short term, everyone will squeeze what they can. And the financial chief of PepsiCo said on his own company's third quarter earnings call that his company is, quote, capable of taking whatever pricing we need.
And those are not the only two. We've read other quotes from other corporations earlier, where almost all of them, because they have they have to be honest in their earnings call, otherwise they could be sued. And two, they like to brag in their earnings call about how much money they're making, so the executives can get higher bonuses. So they go on there and they're like, because of inflation, we've used it as an excuse to drive up prices and nobody's stopping us, right? And so almost every executive is bragging to no end about how they're taking advantage of inflation.
Yep.
And because there is no government left. Guys, last thing, to give you a sense of how unbelievable the corporate profits are. So just 3 years ago in 2019, the third quarter profits were 1.37 trillion. Let's round up and call it 1.4. It's gonna make easy math. And John just told you, this year was 2.08 trillion. So let's round that up to 2.1, right? So 1.4 and 2.1 in just 3 years. That's a 50% increase in profits, and that was already a record. A 50%, guys, from the business world, a 50% increase in profits is not a little, it's gigantic.
Yep.
In just 3 years. Gee, I wonder what's driving up prices. And yet, the only one saying it is Bernie Sanders and the Justice Democrats.
Yeah.
And every other Democrat in Washington is covering corporate ass when they could have won the elections, by the way. If they talked about price gouging, exit polls indicated that price gouging made voters furious. And of the voters that were concerned about inflation, that in the elections voted mainly against Democrats, if they had tackled price gouging, most of those guys said they hate price gouging. They would have loved an attack against price gouging by corporations and big business. They could have easily kept the House, but they serve their corporate donors, and the mainstream media, corporate media, keeps that from you religiously. So you never know that the Democrats are just the good cop and the good cop, bad cop game the corporations play to screw you over. All right, we gotta go. So thank you, John, appreciate it. Everybody check out Damage Report. And by the way, we got breaking news. Anna says, all t-shirts, not good. Okay.
I'm not buying new clothes now.
Okay.
You'll notice I only wear what TYT sends me.
Yeah. By the way, that is literally true for me. So, all right, guys, not only are we gonna get Kanye being banned now again from Twitter, and we'll explain why, but also Elon Musk says that he's gonna put chips in your brains. And right-wingers like, yes, I don't want Fauci tracking me with his microchips in the vaccine, man. That's why I got Elon Musk to put it right in. Okay, that and more when we come back.
Elon.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.